From that report, were there any crimes committed, any problems that you saw in that Mueller report that you feel should be addressed moving forward?
No, to me, what's funny is that this impeachment proceeding really has originated because of this Ukraine call.
Right.
In part because the Ukraine call is easier to understand than some of the Mueller report contents and allegations. And the Mueller report's written in a very restrained way where it's not like this, it's like, and so that also adds to the fact that it's less obvious. This Ukraine call, everyone can understand.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, they withheld aid and pressured another government to try and find some dirt on Joe Biden's family. I mean, that's pretty straightforward. Does it sound like something Trump would do? Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like what he did, but just the more obvious version. It's almost
what they
insane.
did. It's what they've been doing.
That's what they've been doing.
Yeah, it's what they've been doing. So not the Mueller report. You didn't see anything, but you feel like this call is impeachment worthy.
I think this call is impeachment worthy because it's a pattern, because there'd been all of these things that had happened before that were very much
and there's been
analogous.
Convicted criminals around the current president.
Yeah, so I'm on the record saying, look, I'm for impeachment, but I also think impeachment is potentially a massive loser for the Democratic Party because you need a supermajority of senators to actually go through with it, which would require literally like dozens of them to defect. And there's no indication that's going to happen. So if we play this out, impeachment fails, Trump says, look, I was innocent, and all the oxygen gets sucked out of the room for the next number of months. The way to beat Trump is not to talk about Trump. The way to beat Trump is to present a new positive vision for the country that we can all get excited about, that draws in people from every part of the political spectrum.
Can both happen at the same time? Can you continue down the impeachment path? You could continue to put out different messaging. Can these things happen in concert?
I hope so, but I will say that if the media spotlight focuses solely on impeachment, then Trump, in my mind, is winning. Because anytime you're talking about Trump, even in a negative way, he's winning.
Right.
Like the job of the Democratic Party has to be to present something that people find as compelling in a positive way, as Trump is in his own way. And for that, we need all hands on deck. It's not useful, in my mind, for the Democratic Party to focus all of its energies on impeaching Trump when it could just end up running aground in the Senate, which is quite likely if you look at it.
So you would rather Trump finish out his term, the Democrats or whoever the candidate, yourself, beat him in the election. Then what happens to Donald Trump, who's turned the office into a circus and basically ran a criminal organization from the highest office in America and embarrassed us around the world? What should happen?
Well, first, I'm pro-impeachment. I just wish that we could talk about something other than impeachment, like on the news programs every day. And I expect Trump to be there for me to beat in 2020. I expect to beat him. And then if you're asking, hey, would I want to prosecute him and his family and the team? If you look around the world, there's a clear pattern of governments that end up throwing the previous governments in jail. And that happens in developing countries kind of routinely. That is a pattern that the United States of America does not want to fall into, in my opinion. I'm not going to say what I would or wouldn't do because, you have to see if the facts have changed. But to me, the goal is to start solving the problems on the ground and not pretend that Donald Trump was a source of all the problems.
It's interesting because I firmly believe that the office will never be the same unless the people see some sort of reprimand for what is being called crimes. I don't believe that the American public will respect that office the same or the government the same unless, just like the rest of us, if there's wrongdoing, there's punishment. And if we're seeing and everyone's saying that there's wrongdoing and there's no punishment, there's a huge problem. A huge problem that is becomes, if ignored, an unfixable problem. We can solve all the stuff we want to solve and pad people's bank accounts with money and create jobs and everybody goes on being hunky-dory like we have in the past, right? But unless we really start taking the fact that people who hold a certain office, police officers, politicians, the president, accountable for their actions, why are we telling other regular everyday people
to be accountable for their actions? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am all for accountability. I think we're still pulling ourselves up from the financial crisis in part because Americans feel like no one was ever held responsible for that, in which they weren't. And we need to throw people in jail if they do things that destroy millions of lives, or in the case of the pharma companies, kill tens of thousands of Americans. So I'm all about accountability. I think that our trust in institutions has disintegrated in large part because you look up and be like, why does it seem like the rules only apply to the little guy or gal and not the people at the top? Mm-hmm. All of that said, I think that you have to look at the course of history. President Trump has, as we all know, tens of millions of very hardcore fans, staunch believers who think that everything that's leveled against him
His
is just like
he's been on tour for
years.
His concerts are fabulous.
And if you look at even historical precedent, when people have committed crimes as president, the next president has said, look, we need to move forward. To me, we're better served by trying to move the country forward than doing something that just ends up permanently inflaming tens of millions of Americans to say that their guy now is literally behind bars. That to me is not.
You think he becomes a martyr? You think he becomes a martyr in that way?
Yeah. Again, I mean, you end up with this unfortunate pattern because I'm all about accountability, but at the same time, at that level too. One of the reasons why in these other developing countries that they like throw political leaders behind bars is that if you take a group of people who run government for a particular period of time, like you can probably find something that you can like pin on them. Like you don't want to fall into a pattern where it's like, and I think Trump's behavior has gone beyond the pale, clearly.
And as you said, more could come out that could make you go, okay.
Yeah, but it sounds like you're saying these people, whether you're talking about developing countries, which you brought up multiple times, or you're talking about America, you sound like these individuals that reach these heights in their career are above the law for the sheer fear that their fans might get their feelings in a bunch. That's what I'm hearing.
I wouldn't say above the law. What I would say is that we have to try and serve the interests of the country, big picture. And in some cases, I think the service of the country is to be a little bit more forgiving. That's my take. I understand people would have a different take.